This past weekend in Houston, Texas, the 2026 Houston Pokemon Go Regional Championships were held. This was to be the first streamed tournament of the Memories in Motion meta, so many trainers were excited to see what Pokemon would rise to the top and emerge victorious in this new updated meta. And when the dust settled at the end of a long weekend of battling, a two-time regional champion, Elam, was able to climb to the top and claim the championship. Today, we're going to be following Elam's run as he claims his third regional title and the pretty cool team that he used to get there. The team he used is as follows: Shadow Quagsire, Galarian Corsola, Volt Switch Fortress, Clodsire, Wigglytuff, and Shadow Altaria. So Elam is running two Pokemon that received updates in the Memories in Motion meta. Shadow Quagsire with the newly reworked Mudshot, and Fortress running the newly buffed Sandtomb. With this fearsome team of 6, Elam took down trainer after trainer to claim his third regional title. His round 1 opponent of day number 2 was Esteban, a trainer who had made day 2 in their first ever tournament. Esteban's team consists of Fortress, Shadow Drapion, Noctowl, Quagsire, Low Kick Annihilate, and Disarming Voice Florges. The battle starts and it's a terrible lead for Elam as he ends up leading Altaria into the Florges. But an immediate Shadow Quagsire safe switch is very strong because this Florges has opted for Disarming Voice instead of Trailblaze. Elam able to outpace, land the Aqua Tail, and just like that, half of Florges' health bar has been removed. Florges returns fire with the Chilling Water, but Quagsire does not have to respect it. Quagsire just going to look to farm up, go for the Aqua Tail, but now it's Esteban pivoting out and getting the catch onto his own Quagsire. This is a debuffed Aqua Tail, it's really not going to do much. Switch timer not yet up for Elam. He stays in, over farms, plays to the CMP tie, and actually wins charge attack priority in the Quagsire mirror. Now this is very valuable information for Elam for the remainder of the set. Elam able to get a shield advantage out of this mid game as well, and he's very happy to let his Quagsire go. He's now going to be sending in Shadow Altaria. Shadow Altaria should be able to go for a 1-shield farm down if Esteban full sends. However, Esteban knows it, and he's going to be baiting with the Aqua Tail. With this bait, he should have enough HP remaining to survive the Dragon Breaths and make it all the way to the Stone Edge. He gets to the Stone Edge, but before he gets there, Elam's going to cut him off and fire off the Sky Attack. The thing Elam has to keep in mind is the Florges is one off of a Disarming Voice, so it's very close to a move. Elam does not want to concede that final Protect Shield, so he's going to go for a switch and a catch onto the Volt Switch Fortress. Fortress now going to be answered with Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion normally has a pretty tough time here, but Elam has already lost so much HP on the Fortress. Elam has to hope that he can survive. He's going to be no shielding. Crunch is going to land. Fortress hangs on, but not by much. Fortress going to go for the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb only hits for neutral damage, but should do slightly more damage than the super effective Sand Tomb. Rock Tomb connects. Elam stops tapping because he wants as much farm on his Shadow Altaria as he can possibly get. In comes Altaria. The Crunch is debuffed. He's still going to be holding on to that final Protect Shield. He needs it for the move on the Florges. Now it's Altaria's time to get big farm, but disaster strikes as Altaria does get Crunch debuffed. Has Elam been counting? Does he know this is only the Aqua Tail? Elam will not shield. He knows it's just the Aqua Tail. There's the pivot into the Florges, and Florges is able to make a Chilling Water before Elam's able to fire off the Sky Attack. This Altaria is now defense debuffed, it's attack debuffed, but it is almost 100 energy. This is the Shadow Altaria. Sky Attack will still do quite a lot here. Sky Attack lands, Florges survives, but Florges gets Dragon Breath down. Elam's going to have to fire off the Sky Attack at the Shadow Drapion because that will do the most fast move damage. In comes the Drapion, Elam fires off the Sky Attack, and now he can trust in the fact that Quagsire can never Mudshot down Altaria. In comes Quagsire, Quagsire falls to the Dragon Breaths, and that's a game 1 win for Elam. The battle is locked in for game number 2, and it's a very neutral lead. Wigglytuff into Shadow Quagsire. Shadow Quagsire has a massive pacing advantage here, but Wigglytuff is able to get some nice fast move pressure to kind of help offset that. Quagsire farms up to the Stone Edge, gonna go for the Aqua Tail. No shield comes out from Elam. Elam gonna reach for the Icy Wind, but Quagsire already at Aqua Tail number 2. This Aqua Tail will not knock out. Wigglytuff will be able to hang on, and Elam is gonna look to get aggressive and pivot into his own Quagsire. He's gonna fire off the Aqua Tail, knowing he wins charge attack priority, but there's the catch. Quagsire is preserved with the Aqua Tail loaded, and in comes Noctowl. Noctowl is very bulky. It was a beneficiary of the Wing Attack buff, but what Noctowl does not have is particularly good pacing. Noctowl loses charge attack priority to the Quagsire. This Stone Edge would be deadly. Shield does come up from the Noctowl, and it's a charge attack priority tie, Stone Edge, to the Shadow Ball. Elam more than willing to invest a Protect Shield himself because he still has energy loaded on the Wigglytuff. So now Quagsire should be able to make the Stone Edge, pressure the final shield, and then he can try and go for a combination play of sniping with the Icy Wind on the Wigglytuff. Shield comes up from the Noctowl, there's the switch, and in comes Wigglytuff, Icy Wind loaded. No Protect Shields left for the Noctowl, it's forced to take the damage. Noctowl gets rocked by the Icy Wind, and in comes Florges. Florges hoping for the Fairy Wind farm down, but Fairy Wind just does not do enough damage. Wigglytuff hangs on, making it to the Swift, and this is critical health lost on that Florges. Suddenly, the Florges is very low. In comes Galarian Corsola, and Corsola is a very effective damage sponge. Florges gonna go for the debuff first as it fires off Chilling Water. Corsola very happy to absorb that damage, and now Florges is gonna go for the significantly harder hitting Disarming Voice. Unfortunately, this is a Galarian Corsola. Corsola shakes off the damage like it's nothing. Florges desperately trying to make another move, but the Astonish registers and secures the knockout. Corsola does have quite a lot of energy. It is debuffed, but his opponent does not have a lot of HP remaining. In comes Noctowl, predicting an overfarm from Elam, but Elam just fires off the Power Gem, takes the knockout, and that is going to seal it as Noctowl loses all of its energy. Back in comes the Quagsire, but Elam can safely let this go because he knows that he has a small amount of residual energy on his own Quagsire. And he also knows that he wins charge attack priority. So he gets to bring in his own Quagsire, outpace, get the Aqua Tail, and that is going to seal it. In round number 1 of Top Cut, Elam takes the series 2-0. He's moving on to winners round 2 at a very tough opponent in Nighttime Clasher. Nighttime Clasher, the reigning current Latin American International Champion, is running a team consisting of the newly buffed Medicham, Quagsire, Wigglytuff, Corviknight, Guzzlord, and Shadow Fortress. The Shadow Fortress is on Volt Switch. This is a showdown between two of North America's best players, and I cannot wait. The battlers lock in for game number 1, and it's disaster for Nighttime Clasher. He risks a Guzzlord lead, and he ends up leading it into Wigglytuff. Immediate save switch into Shadow Quagsire. Quagsire throwing 5 Mud Shots and the Aqua Tail to ensure that this lands on perfect charge stack timing. Aqua Tail connects, there's the pivot out. Elam saving that Wigglytuff for later because his final 2 Pokemon both have losing matchups into the Guzzlord. With Nighttime Clasher still having quite a bit of HP remaining and having an energy head start, Elam may have to go down a shield in this mid-game, but it would be worth it to ensure that he can preserve that very favorable alignment. Elam wins charge stack priority, but Aqua Tail fails to deliver the knockout. His Quagsire is low enough where he would actually lose switch advantage if he ended up no-shielding, so he's forced to put up a shield and go for the Mud Shot down. That is really not ideal for Nighttime Clasher. He was able to get a shield advantage out of the mid-game, but honestly, considering it's a Guzzlord into a Wigglytuff, he would much rather have switch advantage. Stone Edge no-shielded by the Guzzlord, not really a point in preserving HP on that Guzzlord, considering that there is a Wigglytuff in its future. And the Guzzlord can't even farm down. Quagsire so spammy would have made it to a second Stone Edge, and that forces out a Brutal Swing from the Guzzlord. Nighttime Clasher pivots into the Wigglytuff. Elam stays on the field, fires off the Icy Wind. Shield comes up from Nighttime Clasher, but Elam has the Volt Switch Fortress in the back. This is already a dominant matchup, now made even more so by the attack drop. There's just really nothing that Wigglytuff can do. Unfortunately, Elam had all the answers in this game. Number 1, that Shadow Quagsire save switch from Nighttime Clasher was a bit of a problem for Elam's team, but Elam was able to maneuver around it. Even though he had to surrender a shield in the mid-game, that ended up being the correct call, as this Fortress lined up into the Wigglytuff really just feels like checkmate. Switch timer's up for Nighttime Clasher. He gets the catch and sneak onto the Guzzlord, but unfortunately even this will not be enough to save him. Rock Tomb lands onto the Guzzlord, switch timer comes up for Elam, and he snipes down with a charm. There is just no path now for Nighttime Clasher. He stops tapping. Elam charms down his Wigglytuff and takes the 1-0 series lead. The battlers lock in for game number 2, and it's a much better lead this time for Nighttime Clasher, leading Medicham into Shadow Altaria. The speed at which Medicham can launch these double super effective ice punches is absolutely relentless. Elam forced to put up an early protect shield. He can return fire with the sky attack, but by the time he gets there, Nighttime Clasher is already almost at another ice punch. So this matchup heavily favors Medicham as long as protect shields are in play. Medicham instantly fires off ice punch number 2. Elam now has to decide, is he going to take this damage? He says yes. Shadow Altaria gets rocked. Shadow Altaria will be able to win the ones, but as Medicham, this is a very safe shield into a Psycho Cut down. This will force Elam to pivot out of the matchup. He cannot afford to concede this Psycho Cut down. He save switches into the Wigglytuff just to be answered with the Corviknight. As far as steel types go, Corviknight is not even a particularly strong counter into the Wigglytuff, with one exception. if it gets the first Air Cutter boost, and Nighttime Clasher gets it. Suddenly, this Icy Wind is not really going to do anything for Elam. It just puts the Corviknight back to its normal attack stat, and Corviknight at a normal attack stat is going to do fine. This matchup only gets a little bit awkward if the Wigglytuff is able to put the Corviknight at -1, because suddenly those Air Cutters do nothing. But a full power Air Cutter, that's going to be fine. Nighttime Clasher getting another boost as well. And now Nighttime Clasher can very comfortably take the knockout and exit this matchup with the Corviknight at the very least at +1 attack. Air Cutter is going to land, no boost for the Corviknight this time. In comes Quagsire. He's going to have to watch for a catch attempt, and there it is. Elam sent in the Shadow Altaria. Nighttime overfarms massively, fires off the Air Cutter. Very tough to try and sand attack down an Altaria, but Elam knows he's in quite a lot of trouble. There is so much energy already loaded on that Medicham. He's forced a no shield, but this is a +1 Air Cutter. +1 Air Cutter actually going to do quite a lot of damage. Nighttime Clasher now switches into the mirror. Nighttime Clasher knows that he loses charge attack priority, but the moment he's able to force this final Protect Shield away from Elam, the game is won. Even though Nighttime Clasher's Medicham has taken quite a lot of damage throughout the course of this game, it is still outside of Aqua Tail range, and it has a Dynamic Punch loaded. So even though Elam should be able to double up here, take the knockout with the Aqua Tail, it's just simply not going to matter because the Medicham is outside of Aqua Tail range. Elam doing everything he can in this game number 2, but there's just no way out. Medicham is just simply too bulky. Shadow Quagsire launches the Aqua Tail, hoping for a miracle, but it's not to be. Medicham hangs on. Dynamic Punch will secure the KO. And in this matchup between two of North America's best, we're going to a decisive game number 3. We get a brief look at these battlers' accolades as they lock in for this game number 3, and it's a disastrous lead for Elam, leading Wigglytuff into the Shadow Fortress. Shadow Quagsire's save switch is going to be answered with Medicham, and this is a very bad spot to be in as Elam. Quagsire actually takes some pretty substantial damage from the Psycho Cuts, and Dynamic Punch from the Medicham is going to hit for devastating damage. Add to that the fact that if Elam loses switch advantage, his Corsola is going to be aligned onto the Wigglytuff for Nighttime Clasher. It feels like this game is already over. Elam had to shield once, going to be shielding twice now. He is down 2 shields to 0, doing everything he can to try and flip switch advantage. Quagsire farms up to 100 energy, firing off this Aqua Tail, and Nighttime Clasher is now going to start matching shields. Because Nighttime Clasher knows that alignment is very favorable. Elam at the back-to-back Aqua Tails, and Nighttime Clasher is going to go for the double shield. Nighttime now has the Dynamic Punch loaded. Elam goes for the pivot out, saves the Quagsire, and catches Dynamic Punch onto the Corsola while sneaking through a free Astonish. Corsola now going to be answered by the Wigglytuff. But for Elam, this honestly works out. He was able to preserve a ton of health on that Quagsire and a loaded Aqua Tail as well. Unfortunately, Corsola really cannot do much in the Wigglytuff matchup. It fires off the Power Gem. That does not do much, and that is before the Icy Wind debuff gets applied. Icy Wind does not have enough firepower to take down the bulky Corsola, but it is going to ensure that this next Power Gem is going to do even less damage. Nighttime Clasher will exit this matchup with a charge stack loaded, and Elam needs to absorb that damage on his own Wigglytuff. So, down goes Corsola, Power Gem connects, he brings in Wigglytuff, and the charm goes through as Nighttime Clasher fires off the Icy Wind. Nighttime Clasher now wants to get aggressive, pivot into the fortress. Elam waits the turn, sends in the Quagsire, and the endgame is set. But disaster for Elam, he accidentally mistimes his charge stack and an entire Volt Switch goes through. Aqua Tail does do quite a lot of damage, but giving free energy to a fortress is never a fun spot to be in. Elam gonna go for a second Aqua Tail, that's gonna be putting the fortress critically low. Fortress undertaps the Sand Tomb, but Sand Tomb will fail to deliver the knockout. This game is going to be very, very close. Can Fortress get the Volt Switch down? Quagsire forces the Simul KO, and suddenly Elam is right back in it. He has a very healthy Wigglytuff. Nighttime Clasher shaking his head. He knows he's in trouble. In comes the Medicham. Even if Medicham makes Dynamic Punch, then the Wigglytuff just gets knocked out. He pivots in the Wigglytuff. That gets charmed down. Elam makes the Swift. And despite being Mon for Mon hard countered, Elam finds a way, taking down Nighttime Clasher, and he's on to the Winners Finals. Elam's opponent in Winners Finals is Dunebug97, a 6-time regional champion. Dunebug's team is a bit more anti-meta. Powder Snow, Alolan Ninetales, Gourgeist, Politoed, Guzzlord, Corviknight, and Licky Licky. This will be a best-of-5 series. The battlers lock in for game number 1, and that's a terrible lead for Elam, leading Corsola into Licky Licky. Elam safe switches into Wigglytuff, Dunebug stays on the field and fires off a Body Slam. This is very valuable chip damage onto the Wigglytuff, and suddenly, Wigglytuff, when it's taken some damage, looks a lot less threatening. Doonbug not pivoting out just yet, instead gonna stay on the field and let the Wigglytuff fire off the Icy Wind. This is a perfect opportunity for Doonbug to pivot out and send in the Politoed, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Politoed is incredibly fast at charge attacks, already able to make the Weather Ball. Weather Ball not going to knock out the Wigglytuff, but it will put it very, very low. Weather Ball lands, Wigglytuff able to hang on, Wigglytuff fires off the Swift, but this is not really a charge attack that Politoed has to worry about either. So it's a very safe no shield for the Politoed, it survives with plenty of health remaining, fires off the Weather Ball, and that is an immediate no shield from Elam. Elam is going to look to try and get a big farm down with the Galarian Corsola. In comes Galarian Corsola, going to look to Astonish all the way down and survive Weather Ball very, very comfortably. This will allow the Galarian Corsola to exit with a Power Gem loaded. But Doonbug, he's going to play aggressive. He pivots into the Licky that baits out the Clodsire, and that play by Doonbug probably just secured him the Game 1 win. Doonbug ran ABA strong to the Corsola, so he had no reason to stay on the field. But instead, he pivoted his most neutral Mon to Licky that forced Elam off the field, and now Corsola is going to get annihilated by Guzzlord in the back. Had Doonbug stayed in, given the Corsola farm, maybe there was an opportunity that the Clodsire could have swept, but now there is just no path forward. Elam letting all this damage land on the Clodsire. The Licky got through 2/3 of Clodsire just by itself, and then Doonbug will get to reveal that it's Guzzlord in the back. Politoed answered with the Corsola, there's the Guzzlord, and Elam at this point is basically just setting down the phone and gonna try and focus on game number 2. Because that pivot out by Doonbug just completely ended things. There was just no way for him to have any chance of victory after that happened. Guzzlord takes a lot of Dragon Tails, but will get that full farm down. Back in comes the Clodsire. He's going to start tapping again, but even at this health range, a Brutal Swing still does not knock out. That is how dominant that Clodsire into Guzzlord matchup is, and that's part of the reason why Clodsire was brought here, because Clodsire does look exceedingly strong into Doonbug's team. Elam gets a strong lead in game number 2, leading Wigglytuff into Guzzlord. Save switch by Doonbug into Licky, and Elam is very, very weak to Licky in the back. This makes things a little bit tricky. Elam gonna stay in, absorb the body slam. He will be able to make an Icy Wind, and then once the debuff has been applied onto the Licky, then he can potentially look to send in the Shadow Altaria. This way he gets to preserve the Corsola as it gets to dodge both the Guzzlord and the Licky. So far, this game is going substantially better for Elam. He ran back the Corsola. Doonbug again brought both of the Corsola counters, but it looks like Corsola will dodge both, and that means it's going to have value. Licky banks energy, in comes the Guzzlord, but Guzzlord is so far behind. Shadow Altaria, these Sky attacks hurt, they do big damage. Shield comes up from Doonbug. After one more charge attack, the clock will be up for Elam. Doonbug not throwing energy because he knows if he knocks out the Altaria, then that's just a free switch in for Elam. Sky attack is going to land. Switch clock coming up for Elam. In comes the Wigglytuff, but he just cannot charm down. Guzzlord hangs on, 1 HP remaining to make the last second Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb pressures the shield away from the Wigglytuff. In the back, Doonbug has Corviknight. Corviknight is going to hit the field. But this is a bit of an awkward health range for Corviknight to deal with. Corviknight fires off the Air Cutter, but Wigglytuff will just simply not get knocked out here. So for Wigglytuff, this is a very safe no shield. Wigglytuff gonna overfarm. There's a boost from the Corviknight, and that is what Doonbug was hoping to see. Elam fires off the Icy Wind. Icy Wind is gonna connect. That's some pretty nice damage. Wigglytuff continues to farm. Wigglytuff banks the Swift. There's a catch attempt onto Altaria. Altaria does not get the catch attempt, but it's really tough to sand attack down a flying type, so Corviknight is still forced to fire off energy. That stored Swift in the back could be the key to victory here for Elam in game number 2. He's gonna reveal his final Pokemon as the timer hits 0. It is once again that Galarian Corsola. Payback full send here from Doonbug. Elam has to try and make a call. Elam puts up the shield at the last second and does get that call right. In comes Licky. Licky had the Shadow Ball loaded. This is super effective damage, but it will hit for less damage than a payback. Elam not wanting to take any additional damage, he's just going to fire off the Nightshade as soon as he gets it. This is double resisted, but Licky, it's just simply too low. Nightshade will take the knockout. Back in comes the Corviknight. Corviknight needs to make a payback, and it's just simply not going to get there. Nightshade is reached. Nightshade is going to be pressuring the final shield away from the Corviknight, and then Elam has the charge attack banked on that Wigglytuff. In comes the Wigglytuff. There's the combination play, and Elam gets a much-needed equalizer. Swift knocks out the Corviknight, and this series is evened up 1-1. Battlers lock in for game number 3, and it's a pretty neutral lead, all things considered. Corsola for Elam, into the Corviknight for Dunebug. Corviknight is able to very comfortably survive a Nightshade, but where this matchup gets awkward is that one payback plus the sand attacks do not put the Corsola into air cutter range. Therefore, Corsola is usually able to land 2 Nightshades in the zeros, and Corviknight basically exits with no HP remaining. Corviknight gonna farm up, Corviknight gonna commit to the payback as Corsola fires off the Nightshade. Dunebug now has to decide, is it worth investing a shield? Dune says no, Corviknight hangs on, he commits to the payback, but he does not get there. In comes Guzzlord, there's a safe switch into the Wigglytuff, a charm lands on the Guzzlord as Dunebug immediately pivots out and reveals his final Pokemon is Alolan Ninetales. With Elam's final Pokemon being the Clodsire, he's very happy to bait out the Ninetales. Ninetales connects for the Dazzling Gleam, but Wigglytuff really does not mind. Wigglytuff now going to go for the Icy Wind. It's more expensive and resistant, but will get an attack drop. Elam just wants to ensure that he cannot get Powder Snow down before making it to the Swift. And the Icy Wind immediately is vindicated as the Ninetales fails to farm down, fires off the Weather Ball. Elam is going to be no-shielding, and he sends in Corsola. Corsola going to be met with the Guzzlord, but the reveal, it's Clodsire in the back. Normally from full health, Guzzlord can survive all the poison things and an earthquake very comfortably. However, that Guzzlord is not at full health. That Guzzlord took a charm when the Wigglytuff was safe swapped. And that one charm landing is such a critical difference maker in this endgame. Because suddenly Earthquake is very threatening onto the Guzzlord. Each poisonous thing that lands gets this Guzzlord closer and closer to a range where Earthquake will actually knock out. And the bulk of Clodsire is just absolutely undeniable. Dunebug has Brutal Swing after Brutal Swing, and it just simply does not matter. Another Brutal Swing launched at the Clodsire. Clodsire knows that it will not get knocked out. Clodsire now very close to the Earthquake. Dunebug goes for a switch and a snipe, but Elam gets the switch and switches into Corsola. At long last, Elam puts up the first Protect Shield of the match because he needs to preserve Corsola to deal with the Ninetales. Corsola makes the Nightshade, Ninetales guaranteed to fall as Dunebug has no Protect Shields left to hide behind. And once the Ninetales gets knocked out, that is going to be a game win for Elam because Elam has an Earthquake loaded. Dunebug fires out the Brutal Swing right away. He does not want to take any additional Astonish Fast Move damage, but back in comes the Clodsire. Clodsire very low, but firing off the Earthquake. Earthquake should be enough to knock out the Guzzlord here. Earthquake lands. Dunebug's Guzzlord keeps surviving on 1 HP, but Elam poisons things down and wins Game 3. The Battlers lock in for Game number 4, and it's a pretty neutral start. Fortress into Licky Licky. Licky Licky will have a pretty significant pacing advantage and be able to fire off its first Shadow Ball on perfect charge attack timing. Elam, now with a call to make, puts up the last second shield as the timer hits 0. He is investing in this Fortress. Dunebug doesn't know it yet, but he is in a substantial amount of trouble because his Guzzlord in the back is basically dead weight. Guzzlord has a nightmare matchup into Wigglytuff, and as we saw last game, has a pretty atrocious matchup into the Clodsire as well. Licky Licky fires off the Shadow Ball, debuffed Shadow Ball, really not going to do a lot. Elam over farming once again, he tries for a Shadow Ball catch onto Wigglytuff, but good patience from Dunebug. He stores the energy and then sends in the Alolan Ninetales. But this sets up Clodsire into the Guzzlord endgame, and that is an endgame that heavily favors Elam. Weather Ball is going to land. Elam this time going to be going for the Swift. Dunebug no shields, potentially worried about an Icy Wind, but that means this Swift damage is going to land, and that could potentially set up a farm down for the Wigglytuff. Ninetales is going to fire off a Weather Ball, but it's already taken so much damage that this is a very tempting shield for Elam. Dune should still be 3 Powder Stones away from his next move. That's going to set up a perfect farm down for Elam. In comes Licky Licky, but Wigglytuff will win charge attack priority. Wigglytuff firing off the Icy Wind, Dunebug's no shielding. He thinks he hangs on, and he does! Wigglytuff not able to take the knockout. Licky Licky with a 1 HP survive, and Dunebug finally gets rid of that Wigglytuff. Elam sends back in the Fortress. He stored so much energy from earlier, and now he's going to make this Guzzlord pay. Guzzlord is going to be no shield in the first as Rock Tomb is going to connect. Elam immediately fires off Rock Tomb number 2. Dunebug puts up the shield. He doesn't know what's in the back, but the moment he put up that shield, this game was over because in comes Clodsire. If you thought that Guzzlord didn't do a lot of damage before, wait until it's double debuffed. This Clodsire just feels absolutely immortal. No Drain Punch needed. With the 2 debuffs, this Clodsire can basically just survive forever. Clodsire farms to 100 energy, firing off the Stone Edge. Dunebug will put up the Protect Shield, but realistically, there's no path forward for him in this game. He tries to make the Body Slam. He does not get there. Guzzlord will get knocked out by the Earthquake, and Elam takes the winners finals 3-1. He's going to be advancing to the grand finals of the Houston Regional Championships. And his grand finals opponent was a rematch against Doonbug after Doonbug took down Nighttime Clasher in the losers finals. This will once again be a best of 5, and what a lead for Elam as he leads Voltswitch Fortress into Politoed. And it's disastrous for Doonbug. Doonbug ran ABA weak to the Fortress. Fortress is on the lead, and with a Corviknight in the back, he can't really afford to pivot out. So Politoed will fire off the Weather Ball, Elam putting up an early Protect Shield because he knows if Doonbug is staying in, then he is incredibly core broken in the back. It's either going to be the Corviknight or the Alolan Ninetales lurking. By shielding up the first, that means that now he only has to deal with -1 Weather Balls. Weather Ball is a pretty efficient attack, but it does not have a particularly high amount of damage. So once you put it to -1, it really feels like the Fortress can tank these Weather Balls for days. Fortress more than happy to no-shield once again. Fortress gonna look for the full farm down and get it. Doonbug knows that he's in a bit of trouble. In comes Guzzlord, there's the safe switch into the Wigglytuff, and that's going to be luring out the Corviknight. And this again sets up Elam so perfectly. He's able to position himself where the Clodsire is going to be aligned onto the Guzzlord endgame. He has a bunch of energy stored on that Fortress. Doonbug does not get the Air Cutter boost, and that makes an already kind of tough matchup even more neutral and favored towards the Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff gets that Icy Wind debuff applied, and suddenly these Air Cutters are going to be doing absolutely nothing. Wigglytuff with a very easy no-shield, as Elam knows the entire line, but Doonbug, he may have some guesses, but he does not yet know that Clodsire is that final Pokemon. Another Air Cutter from Doonbug, another no-shield from Elam. With this -1 attacks, that Corviknight just really not doing much of anything. There is the boost at long last to put the Corviknight back to neutral, just to be immediately put back to -1 by the Icy Wind. Icy Wind is going to land. Doonbug is going to make the last second Air Cutter, but at this point, he's taken so much damage that the Corviknight has effectively been neutralized. Air Cutter takes the knockout. Elam, he gets to bring in the Voltswitch Fortress, and Doon will pivot into the Guzzlord. There's the pivot into the Guzzlord, but Guzzlord will immediately be met with the Rock Tomb. Doonbug has to decide, does he put up the shield? He says no, but once the debuff's applied, in comes the Clodsire, and just how do you beat this Clodsire? Doonbug, he's shaking his head. He knows there is no way out. He just cannot damage this Clodsire whatsoever. Stone Edge is going to land. Doonbug at this point basically conceding there is no path forward. After losing the first game of Winners Finals, Elam has now won 4 games in a row against Doonbug. The battlers lock in for game number 2, and it's a pretty neutral lead all things considered. Corsola into the Corviknight. We've seen this lead matchup play out, and the Corviknight did fall short of a second payback. It would have been damage registration there if it got it, but it did not get the move. So Doonbug is going to be adjusting his strategy. Doonbug is going to be shielding up the Nightshade. Doonbug farms up past the payback, going to be full sending. Elam now with a choice to make. Will he mirror shields? No, he's going to be no shielding. Payback connects, and that does quite a considerable amount of damage. Elam seems content to stay on the field and fire off another Nightshade. Doonbug's already shielded once. He is not going to want to shield twice, but for having not committed a single Protect Shield in this matchup, this has worked out surprisingly well for Elam. Elam's going to be no-shielding as Doonbug goes for the Air Cutter. Doonbug's hoping Air Cutter will set up a farm down here. Air Cutter does not get the boost. And oh my goodness, Elam, he could have held on to make another Nightshade. That Corsola refused to get KO'd. That forces a second Air Cutter out of Doonbug. Doonbug gets the boost, but one Air Cutter too late. In comes Wigglytuff for Elam, more than happy to absorb a +1 Air Cutter because Elam got shield advantage. Now Doon has to decide, is it going to be that Clodsire in the back? He says yes, and he sends out Gourgeist. Gourgeist fires off the immediate Seed Bomb. Elam going to be putting up the Protect Shield. Elam can threaten massive damage with the Icy Wind, but this does set up an endgame where it's Clodsire versus Politoed, and that is not typically going to be an endgame that favors the Clodsire. Icy Wind comes out from Elam. Doonbug with a tough decision to make. Doonbug will put up the Protect Shield, and that is good for Elam. Getting that final shield down, very helpful. Tries for a catch, does not get it, and now it's Clodsire versus Politoed, but Elam was able to generate a shield advantage. Shield advantage very critical if Clodsire wants an opportunity to overcome this very negative matchup. Weather Ball lands. Clodsire, the bulk on it is just absolutely terrifying. Even a second Weather Ball plus the Mud Shots will fail to deliver the knockout. Stone Edge is going to connect onto the Politoed. Politoed farming up to the back-to-back Weather Balls, but it's a charge attack priority tie. Weather Ball to the Stone Edge. Elam needs this to knock out. If it does not knock out, then Politoed is going to make it to a third Weather Ball. This is going to be close. Doonbug has to hope that his Politoed can survive. Stone Edge lands. Politoed survives. There's a simultaneous switch. Gourgeist into the Wigglytuff. This will come down to a charge attack priority tie. Wigglytuff versus the Gourgeist. Doonbug does have that Seed Bomb loaded, but Wigglytuff wins charge attack priority, and winning that charge attack priority tie wins Elam the game. Icy Wind denies the Seed Bomb as it takes the knockout. Back in comes Politoed with a Weather Ball, but the damage is done. Wigglytuff can get KO'd, but Clodsire cannot. In comes Clodsire, getting the Poison Sting down. Elam is one win away from winning it all. The battlers lock in for game number 3 as the series now moves to tournament point. If Elam wins any one of the next 3 games, the series is over and he is crowned regional champion. If Doonbug wants to stay alive in this tournament and force a bracket reset, a second best of 5, he's going to have to win the next 3 games in a row. The lead is a pretty neutral one, Wigglytuff into Licky Licky, although Doonbug has to be pretty happy seeing the Wigglytuff on the lead, as he has brought the Guzzlord at the back. Wigglytuff goes for the Icy Wind, debuffing Licky Licky. Licky Licky gonna stay on the field and try and get as much damage as it possibly can, because if Wigglytuff gets KO'd, then suddenly that Guzzlord looks very strong in the back, because Elam has chosen to bench the Clodsire. Wigglytuff firing off the Swift, Doonbug with the no shield, down goes Licky Licky, but this is his opportunity as in comes Politoed. Politoed gonna look to overfarm, throwing 7 mud shots and the Weather Ball, cutting off the Wigglytuff right before it's able to make the Swift. Elam's gonna be conceding the Wigglytuff, it gets knocked out, and suddenly that Guzzlord for Doonbug looks very strong. However, the Corsola is going to be a very effective damage sponge against the energy from the Politoed, so Elam should still be in the driver's seat here. Weather Ball is going to connect onto the Corsola. That does absolutely nothing. Corsola farming up a ton of energy, but so is the Politoed. Corsola goes to the Nightshade, but the catch and sneak from Doonbug. Could this be the opportunity that he needs to find an opening and get a win in this series? That Nightshade really did not do much, but what it did do by Doonbug catching it is it desynced the switch timers. Elam brings in Shadow Altaria into the Guzzlord, but Elam has to be well aware that Doonbug's switch timer will be up far before his. Elam's going to be no shield in the first Brutal Swing, returning fire with the Sky Attack, and Doonbug will start investing in the Guzzlord. Guzzlord going to look to farm up, position itself where it's only 1 off the next Brutal Swing, and if Elam puts up the shield, then Doonbug will have the ability to pivot out and snipe with energy on the Politoed. That's exactly what it's going to do, and Politoed doesn't even need the Ice Beam, it's only going to need the Weather Ball. Elam puts up the shield, but now it feels like he's in trouble. He brings in the Corsola, Doonbug gets to throw 3 and the move, perfectly taking advantage of the fact that Elam did get 1-turn switch there. Since Elam was forced to burn his final shield from Politoed launching Weather Ball at the Altaria, if Doonbug is ever able to make a Brutal Swing on his Guzzlord in the back, that can knock out the Altaria and win the game. Doonbug fires off the Weather Ball. That does not take the knockout. Doonbug stops tapping because all Doonbug wants is that farm on Guzzlord. In comes Guzzlord. He can't get the Astonish down. He has to hope that the Dragon Breath will take the knockout, but it does not. The Guzzlord with yet another 1 HP survive. Doonbug takes the knockout with the Sludge Bomb. He stays alive, and we're going to a game number 4. The battlers lock in for game number 4, and it's a dominant lead win for Doonbug. Guzzlord into Fortress. Immediate save switch by Elam into the Wigglytuff, and Wigglytuff is going to be answered with the Corviknight. We've seen this matchup go multiple ways, and it all comes down to how much is Corviknight going to boost. Doonbug fires off the Air Cutter gets an instant boost, and just like that, Elam shakes his head. He knows he has no ability now to make a play for switch advantage. In the back, Doonbug has the Alolan Ninetales, and Elam has the Clodsire, and that is not a winning endgame for Elam. Elam going to be no shielding as another Air Cutter comes through from this Corviknight. Air Cutter is going to land. Doonbug gets another boost, and his Corviknight is just consistently boosting itself up higher and higher and higher. Elam with the no shield. Wigglytuff is going to get knocked out. This Corviknight exits so healthy. No boost this time, but it really feels like damage has been done because this Corviknight is so healthy that it's going to make a boosted payback. That would be critical damage onto the Fortress. Elam forced to burn a shield. He cannot afford to let that damage land, but now he's down a shield, and that Alolan Ninetales is going to absolutely destroy Clodsire. In comes Clodsire, in comes the Ninetales to answer it, and it really feels like Doonbug is on the verge of evening up this series. Elam's going to be no shielding. He knows he can survive a Weather Ball, but the pacing on Alolan Ninetales is just simply too fast. Elam fires off the Stone Edge, shield comes up from Doonbug. This Alolan Ninetales, its pacing is just going to completely run away with this game. Ninetales can look to overfarm, even go for the charge stack priority tie, Weather Ball to the Stone Edge. Elam's gonna no shield, he knows there is no path forward in this game. Weather Ball takes the knockout onto the Clodsire, and back in comes the Fortress. Doonbug even gonna save all that energy on the Ninetales, get the catch onto the Guzzlord, but even with Guzzlord debuffed, there is just too much HP on Doonbug's side for Elam to ever get the win. Doonbug fires off the Brutal Swing. Elam's going to be no shielding. This is a -1 Brutal Swing, but it still just feels like it's too little too late. Doonbug has so much HP remaining. He's going to be no shielding as well. Elam went for the Sand Tomb bait, thinking that was maybe his only win con, but Doonbug knew that even a Rock Tomb would not have secured the knockout there. So Doonbug's going to be saving the shield for the Alolan Ninetales, knowing that Ninetales will be able to close out the game for him as needed. And Elam, unfortunately, is now going to be met with the Alolan Ninetales switch in. Elam no shields, Fortress gets KO'd, and we're going to a game number 5. The battlers lock in for this decisive game number 5, and it's a dominant lead for Elam as he leads Fortress into the Alolan Ninetales. Save switch from Doonbug into the Gourgeist. Gourgeist going to be answered with Corsola. This is a pretty good matchup for Corsola. However, up energy, Gourgeist can make this very uncomfortable. Doonbug full sends the Shadow Ball. Elam calls it out and puts up the shield. That is a big swing of momentum for Elam. Elam will throw 3 Astonishes and the Nightshade, ensuring that he can get the shield back before the second Shadow Ball is available. Doonbug now in quite a bit of trouble that first Shadow Ball was shielded. It looks like Doonbug can make a second Shadow Ball, but will not make a third charge stack. And avoiding that third charge stack should put Elam in a very good spot, because Elam is going to get the Astonish farm down. No Seed Bomb for Doonbug. He can bring back in the Ninetales, but Ninetales is going to take critical damage from the Corsola. Corsola fires off the Power Gem. This is super effective damage, but Doonbug cannot afford to shield. The Ninetales is already going to be aligned into the Fortress. Elam makes the Nightshade, going to be losing charge attack priority to the Ninetales, but this is a Galarian Corsola. It's just simply too bulky. Weather Ball not going to take the knockout. He now gets a Nightshade, and that pretty much slams the door on any hopes Doonbug has in this game. Doonbug is forced to put up the shield, because if he no shields, the Licky Licky is going to be permanently debuffed. So he saves a charge stack, sends in the Licky Licky, and Licky Licky is answered with Wigglytuff. The Licky Licky does have an energy advantage, but having a full health Fortress in the back is going to be Elam's ticket to victory. Body Slam lands. Wigglytuff does not care. Wigglytuff, the charms adding up, getting closer and closer to the Icy Wind. Another Body Slam comes out from Doonbug. Doonbug trying to find a win con, but it just simply feels like there is no way out. Elam gonna overfarm. He's gonna play to the charge stack priority tie. Wigglytuff against the Licky Licky. And Doonbug nods his head. He knows this series is over. There is no path forward. That charge stack priority tie is the dagger. Body Slam has been debuffed. Wigglytuff will survive. And now he can pivot into the Fortress. There's a switch into the Ninetales, maybe hoping for a catch, but a catch is just simply not going to happen. He makes the Dazzling Gleam. Fortress does not mind. Fortress shakes out the Dazzling Gleam damage, gets the Volt Switch down, and Elam has done it. He won 2 regionals in the 2025 season. He won Atlanta, he won Toronto, and now Elam is the 2026 Houston Regional Champion for Pokemon Go. Massive congratulations to Elam as he claims his 3rd regional championship. Elam played magnificently throughout the course of this weekend. I'm still at a complete loss how he was able to find a way to win that game number 3 against Nighttime Clasher when all seemed lost and he was basically triple hard countered. I really appreciate that in this new competitive meta, Double Sire, Quagsire plus Clodsire is now a viable and a winning strategy, as the Quagsire was so strong in the sets leading up to the finals, and then in winners finals and grand finals, it was the Clodsire show, as Clodsire proved to be a nightmare for that Guzzlord to deal with. Thank you so much for watching today's video. My name is HomeSliceHenry, and you've been watching More Slice Henry, my second channel where I cover content primarily related to the Championship Series. If you enjoy watching content like this, here's how you can help support the channel. Leave a like on the video, leave a comment, tell me what you liked about it, what you'd like to see improved in the future, and if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please do consider doing so. It's free and it helps the channel so much. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.